again, I have empathy for people that just don't understand. And you see this awakening, I think, over the past few weeks about like, what was this dressing down of Zelensky in the Oval Office? Like, I don't understand. Wait a second. I thought he was the hero. We see him on the Grammys, right? He pops up every time there's an award show. He's asking for money. Thank you for standing with Ukraine. Like, he's our guy. So wait a minute. So you're telling me that this is wrong?
But nobody cares about Ukraine. We just watched like the murder of like its entire young male population, and like we want more to die. So we're not for Ukraine. We're against Russia. And we're so against Russia that calling someone pro-Russia is a slur, basically. But no one ever explains, why are we supposed to be against Russia? Like I feel like I'm coming to a conversation late. I missed the predicate, like the part where you explained to me why I have to hate Russia. I'm totally agnostic on Russia. Well, now I have been to Moscow a couple of times. And I think it's the most beautiful city I've ever been to. So I like Moscow, but I still don't even have strong feelings about Russia. Why am I supposed to hate Russia? Like, what is this? Because like they mistreat, I'm going to speculate what this is, but I don't get it still 3 years in.
Didn't you see the movie Red Dawn in the 1980s?
But those are the Soviets. Like, I'm totally opposed to the Soviets.
They're going to invade us right now.
But
aren't you paying attention?
But the truth is that so many of the people who are now fanatically opposed to Russia were not fanatically opposed to the Soviets.
Right.
So what the hell is going on? I actually think even the term Ukraine is a distraction from the truth, which is we are at war with Russia. That war is funded by the United States primarily. Some of the attacks on Russia were coordinated by U.S. military personnel in Ukraine. The Ukrainian government is supported wholly by the United States. Our intel agencies and our intel officers are in Ukraine directing the Ukrainian intel service. So these are all facts. So like we are at war with Russia, but why? And why the hatred?
I think that's a brilliant question. Why? Maybe it goes back to looking at George Soros and I think an essay that he wrote in the 1990s about this, because he's been largely involved in his Open Society project, which is the destruction of Russia.
Yes.
So the destruction of Russia is meant to enable the expansion of the United States, militarily and economically. We need to destroy Russia. We need to destroy China, according to George Soros, in order for that expansion. So George Soros intimately involved with the expansion of NATO, using Slavic people, not Americans, to die on behalf of George Soros and NGOs like USAID and others to have this massive change. So Adam Schiff said it publicly on the House floor, for crying out loud. I mean, I played that clip a million times. They die over there, so we don't have to. We fight them over there, so we don't have to fight them here. It's the same thing. I don't know if you saw Eric Swalwell last week, for crying out loud. He said this is the greatest investment we've ever made. Meaning, and he said 0 Americans have died, which is a lie, by the way, because there's actually been a number of Americans that have died fighting Russia in Ukraine.
Well, a bunch of Americans have died.
It'd be interesting to see finally when those families have been told to sign NDAs and not speak about it. I know for a fact that Americans have died in Ukraine fighting Russia.
Of course, some of it's on camera, by the way.
Yeah, but they'll deny it. They'll say that these were just mercenaries. They weren't tied to it. They're just, they were there voluntarily, like the guy who tried to kill Trump in Mar-a-Lago. Like, these are just, we have no control over these people. That's total bullshit. Of course you have control over these people.
Well, you could, very easily say that, and we probably should say that no American is allowed to serve in a foreign military. I don't understand. We have a person serving on the National Security Council right now who served in the Ministry of Defense in a foreign country. Like, no? How about no?
Right.
You're not allowed to have multiple citizenships. You're not allowed to serve in a foreign military? What? If that's not disloyal, I don't know what is. We have a military. We have all kinds of clear and present threats. Basically because the people serving in foreign militaries, encouraged us to get involved in all this crap. Anyway, whatever.
Yeah.
We could clearly shut that down, and we haven't. You made reference to NDAs. Do you think that people have been pushed to sign NDAs? Oh,
for sure. The families of those who have fallen, specifically in Ukraine. I wonder how many people. I wonder if we're talking, President Trump, transparency. How many Americans have died in Ukraine fighting Russia, and then how many families of those special forces or just NATO soldiers have had to sign NDAs about their service there.
That's wild. I never even thought of that.
I've had, former members of the CIA tell me that. High-ranking members of the military tell me that. So I would like to know. Maybe the Trump administration can pull these numbers out and we can hear more about that. How many Americans have died? Because we know French, Polish more than anyone, dying in Ukraine. I mean, talk about a country that's been destroyed.
I was about to say, I hate to say it, but the Poles, who I think are great people for the record, never met a Pole I didn't like, except for Ann Applebaum's husband. But boy, they always end up bearing the brunt of everything in Europe.
Yeah, and massive NATO bases, a flood of refugees that have completely changed their country. Millions of Ukrainian refugees have poured across the border that they just welcomed in with open arms. The language totally changed in neighborhoods across Poland. So instead of speaking Polish, you're just hearing Ukrainian now through these neighborhoods. Completely changed that. So when I look at the project and going back, go back to the 90s, go back just a few years to 2014, I've seen this awakening, or at least an awareness over the past week, once Trump and J.D. Vance dressed down Zelensky in the Oval Office, to say, because Zelensky lied right to their faces multiple times that Putin violated our exchange of prisoners. He violated the Minsk agreements. Well, to anyone sitting there saying, oh, really? Oh, so Putin's the bad guy. He's the one who violated the prisoner swap. Really, that's... No. So when you start looking at it, no, that's not at all what happened. Zelensky lied right to Trump's face, right to Zelensky's face, that Putin violated the prisoner exchange in 2019. That's total bullshit. Total BS. In fact, Zelensky's on camera welcoming the prisoners back at a ceremony. I think it was in Paris in 2019. So Putin didn't violate that at all. In fact, he adhered to it. Same with the Minsk agreements, which we know Angela Merkel, Chancellor of Germany at the time, joked later that they were never going to adhere to the Minsk agreements to provide peace and stick with that. Instead, they carried out a genocide in eastern Ukraine, what was eastern Ukraine, for 10 years. No one wants to talk about the civilians that were killed. This infuriates me at a level. Just picture a child in Donbass or Donetsk or Luhansk walking to school, and they go through a park and they pick up one of these pedal mines. Have you seen these pedal mines? Yes. These green, they look like a leaf. Journalist Eva Bartlett has done unbelievable work on this. But these kids, they're meant to look. So the kids walk up to them and they pick them up and their hands blow off. That's what these civilians have been dealing with in Donbass and Donetsk, in Luhansk for 10 years. So ethnic Russians living in those areas. So when people say, oh, this thing started when Putin invaded. Okay. Yes, I'm very anti-war, so I always feel like, yes, there's probably a way to solve it without killing people. So in that, I'll give you that. Putin maybe didn't need to invade in order to and he didn't want to, by the way. He didn't want to. His government, his parliament voted for it. He didn't want to. So to go into eastern Ukraine, in Donbass, in Donetsk, and Luhansk, set up areas and protect those ethnic Russians who are being slaughtered for the past 10 years. And it was the United States, it was NATO, it was Boris Johnson, it was all of those clowns pushing NATO right up to that doorstep and coordinating these attacks. I mean, the CIA, the New York Times did a whole profile on how CIA basically runs Ukraine, multiple field offices. So the coup that took place in 2014, I know you've spoken at length about this, you know all about it. I know your audience is well educated. They know all about it. But this was a CIA-backed coup in 2014. We installed a Western puppet government in Ukraine after the Maidan coup to do our bidding.